Hey, how's it going? It's Jesse here from the Land Investing Business Secrets podcast. I've got an awesome guest, Mason McDonald. Man, this guy is just so plugged into the land world. You're going to hear about this. I mean, it's his job, it's his business, it's his marketing, it's his content creation. As he said it at the end of the show, he's not famous or anything, but I hope you guys do take some notes because there's some really interesting things that he's doing. And off the air, it's just so funny. It's just like he's just doing the same thing, and it continues to give back. So here is Mason McDonald, an awesome Pebble user of ours, a huge performer, obviously, in this space you're going to hear. I hope you enjoyed this episode here with Mason. All right, everybody, we've got our guest here, Mason McDonald. Mason, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Jesse. Busier than ever, but having a fantastic time with everything.
Yeah, I feel like there's so much to dig in with you. We had you on almost a year and a half ago from recording this now in mid-February. That was episode 113. So if you guys haven't listened to that, we could kind of talk about transitioning from a corporate CEO to being a land investor. But yeah, you can sort of get the backstory about Mason on that episode. I wanted to catch up with you, and I was like doing some digging here, but before we hopped on, I'm like, holy smokes, you've got a lot of activity going on. Help us just kind of catch up here. What does Mason's world look like in terms of just what's on your hands?
Yeah, well, it's funny looking back at that last episode. I've now been in land longer than I was in healthcare, which is kind of a funny occurrence that happened just a few weeks ago, as we're recording this in February of 26. But yeah, since the last episode, still flipping land, buy for cheap, sell for more. I became licensed last year as a broker, so I've been doing listings and representing buyers. I mean, today, for instance, if I can walk through my morning to kind of shows exactly what I'm doing. I went to the county to record a plat map on a subdivision we did. How many lots was that? About 12 lots, 400 or 500 acres, just an exempt subdivision here in Colorado. After that, I mailed off documents for a closing that I had on a pretty just simple land flip, buy for 10 grand, sell for 20 grand. And then I went to a closing for a client I represented, selling a piece of commercial land, $775,000 piece of dirt. So nice little, $25K commission check, and recording a podcast, and then going to Denver to go pick up my wife's Valentine's Day present. So it's, just a typical day in the life of a land guy.
Wait a minute. What are we getting from Denver? What are you bringing back from Denver?
My jeweler's up there. So it's, I ordered in her gift from there. And
Wow.
while Colorado Springs has just about everything, my jewelry store is up there. So, and better food. We go up to Denver a lot for a hot pot. So it always make a date out of it.
I love it. Oh, thanks for just catching us up there. Help us understand right now. I mean, where is most of your focus going towards?
Yeah. So one of the interesting things that came from becoming a licensed broker was the reason I became licensed, which has resonated with a lot of the audience on my podcast, is when you are making offers on land, you're offering anywhere from 25 to 75% of market value. And the most common objection that you're going to get is, well, I want more money. And becoming a broker, I was able to offer more money by picking up listings. Yeah, you don't make as much money as you would whenever you're flipping, but picking up, an extra 2, 5, 10, 20 grand a week, slinging land deals, especially whenever you have the knowledge that you get from land investing, which most land agents won't actually have, has been really beneficial. And from that, a guy saw how many land listings I had, and he offered to buy all of them at, about 50% of what I was selling them for. And I was like, no, man, that's what I do. And we got to know each other. They hired me on as their buyer's agent. And from there, they hired me on. My title is Vice President of Acquisitions and Development for Colorado Land and Ranches. And so now I'm doing it at a much, much larger scale with someone else's money, which is also really, really nice to be able to do and not have all of my capital deployed into land deals. So we're buying large ranches and chopping them up kind of in the Front Range area, Colorado, Wyoming. So yeah, that's what's taking up most of my time. We've got over 4,000 acres under contract that we're buying and developing throughout the Front Range. And so meeting with counties, figuring out road specs, meeting with electric companies, doing, still exempt subdivisions. So I wouldn't call myself exactly a developer. That just means we're regulated at the state level rather than a city or a county. But yeah, it's keeping me very, very busy.
With your hands in so many different things. I like how you said you're just land slinging here. I love that. Are you handling most of this by yourself, or what is your team, or maybe is it just you?
So in my business, it's just me. I'm still acquiring fantastic deals, but our volume has decreased so much that because so much of my focus is on this new job that, on the job side of things, I've got my role in acquisitions and development. There's a managing partner kind of overseeing everything. And then we've
Right.
got a salesperson, a director of sales that manages the sales team where we have anywhere from 10 to 20 salespeople because we do these 1 day big events, 1 day ranch liquidation event and have, 40, 50 people come out, buy land where we'll sell, 5, 10, 20, 30 lots in a single day, doing stuff like this. But what's funny about all of this is, where am I getting these deals on market, with realtors? But a lot of my deals come from just sending mail from Pebble. So the business model hasn't changed. It's just larger properties.
Okay, well, when you're sending mail, like how much volume of mail are you sending out there?
Not as much because there's only so many properties that even exist that we're interested in. So I've kind
Yeah.
of boiled down my list to the, five or, well, it's a little more than that, but about 7 to 9,000 properties that totally exist. And a lot of them are multiple properties owned by the same owner.
Yeah.
And so we'll do I was telling you just right before we hopped on, sent out 5,000 mailers. Got 2 deals under contract, a 640 acre lot and then a 300 acre lot. So right around 1,000 acres from a 5,000 count mailer that we'll be closing on pretty soon. And that's perfect. It's multi 7 figure return total on I don't know what I spent, $4,500 on mail or something like that.
Right,
It's crazy.
right. So the question just kind of jumped out of my head. Let's kind of come back to the marketing side of things. You're sending out mailers and you're getting these deals done. Are you being really specific about your messaging? This is one of the things that I'm seeing more and more. People are being very, very careful about that, and they're doing the upfront work when they're sending out direct mail. Help us understand what that is like for for.
Yeah, so I can kind of break it down into 2 different categories where I send mail as a real estate agent all the time too, because not a lot of people are doing this, where those are just the 6x9 postcards. I kind of blanket all of the land that I would want to personally list as a broker. And
Mm.
I compete against the bad land investors, to be honest, where I say, are you tired of lowball offers on your land? Let us
Yep.
do a free market evaluation. And if you like it, we'll sell your property for you, which has picked up a good amount of listings for me.
Yeah.
And that's kind of more a blanket one. For the development projects that we're working on, it's just a minimum acreage criteria. And the biggest problem with it is, and I've tried all the different land, data providers that are out there.
Yeah.
None of them have gotten it perfectly right because I can't get so specific where there's a lot of data that's just not available to the public, where
Right.
we seek out as much road frontage as possible, which you can kind of, scrub for that. But
Yeah.
electric lines and stuff, you can see where transmission lines are, but you can't see where the actual power lines are that bring power to the property. So we just kind of blanket everything that we possibly can because the cost of mail is so low and our returns are so high that it's just kind of a minimum acreage criteria that we
Okay.
seek out whenever we're doing it. But I mean, each county is going to be so different of, the western part of the county that's closer to the city is going to be valued substantially more than the eastern part of the county or, different topographies and stuff like that that go in. But I kind of believe in the more blanket approach and then filter down as the leads come in.
As much as you think, Mason, it's blanket approach. For those that are listening, done millions of mailing, and we're finally getting into some of that data from a very aggregate view. Mason here is addressing a problem. He has stated it on his postcard. And I think this is the missing link for 99% of people trying to send mailing out there. They're sending the quick cash thing, they're sending the 30-day thing, and nobody cares about that. And clearly, Mason, you're talking and rubbing in that problem and you're providing them a solution. It's like almost like marketing 101 here, but I think people just don't understand. Although you say it's blanket, I think you're addressing a problem here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think there's so much that goes into land valuation where, that lot that I sold today as a broker, it's on a street that's getting redeveloped into primarily commercial property. Actually,
Mm.
I got the listing because I sold, a lot at the end of the cul-de-sac that wouldn't have worked as well for commercial because it's sandwiched in between 2 homes. It's a corner lot, so it's, triangle shaped, which makes it a little more challenging from a development standpoint. And I
Yeah.
sold that at 365 and I sold this one at 775,000. So it's, I think The blind offer letter, which I've had tremendous success over the years using blind offers, doesn't work as well whenever you're attempting to gather so much information, which is why I think neutral letters in general work better. The
Yeah.
postcard on the broker side of thing is fantastic because it picks out a pain point where these people get inundated. I own a lot of land, so I get these letters, and
Yeah.
I call these people all the time too, which, by the way, almost none of you guys answer. So answer the phone whenever people call you, wanting to sell their land to you. But the approach that I've used for a long time that's worked well in the past couple years is the blank offer letter, is what I call
Mhm.
it. So where you don't
Mhm.
have to worry about that valuation, and I put in a line of, "Hey, you name your price, send it back to us if that works for us." So it's got the purchase agreement on it, but if that price works for us, we'll pay. If not, we'll talk to you about what we can actually do. So you don't turn off the person that maybe the land's worth 100 grand. You offered them 37,000 because you were lazy with your comping and you couldn't get, as geospecific as possible whenever you were doing it.
Yeah.
But they would have sold your land at 65, their land at 65 grand. And so
Right.
you turned them off by lowballing them so much where I can come in, make a competitive offer or list their property for them that they would have, if you had done a better job, you might have gotten that deal.
Okay, so you heard it from Mason, mailing and talking about postcards and messaging, and I kind of chimed in a little bit on that. It's so important that you guys are doing this right. Mason and I chatted in the background about how it's he used the word he's doing the same shit since the beginning, and how Pebble has made it so easy for him to continue to do the same shit. And excuse me for my coarse language here, but it's made it so easy for him to continue to send mailing. But the key thing here is the right mailing. And a lot of the mailing, like almost 99% that I'm seeing, and we're doing like millions and millions of mailings for a lot of investors, that they're sending the wrong things. It's the wrong messaging. And why I believe in the postcard format over the letters. And clearly, Mason is another one of those firm believers as well. And there's proof here with the amount of deals that he's doing. So if you're interested and you believe in mailing and mailing is going to be a part of your strategy, please hop on a call with me. I'd love to share a little bit more with you, get you started the right way, or pivot to actually doing mailing the right way, making sure we have messaging. How do we show proof? How do we build trust? These aren't just simple things anymore where we just like, okay, I'm just going to slap a photo of myself on there. Although I've seen some super interesting, like extremely like simple postcards out there as well. So anyways, if you want to hop on a call, learn how you get your mailing out of Pebble, you could do that for free today. Head over to pebblerei.com/demo. Find a time with me, jump on a call, and I'll share a little bit more. Anyways, enjoy the rest of this super insightful podcast here with Mason. Do we sort of just have to accept that profit margins are a little bit skinnier than they used to be?
I think in general, and I think what's interesting is my philosophy on land investing has kind of changed over the last couple of years, where initially the flipping of land was like my active income generation.
Mm.
And, you'd put that money into rental properties and stuff that people told me was passive. It's not passive. Rental properties are the biggest pain in my butt. It makes me miss land whenever I have tenant problems and stuff like that. But land investing for me has turned more into a passive income generating model by being able to sell on owner financing. So
Mm.
that's what brings more buyers to the table and creates a more sustainable business. Because going back to what you said, like the quick cash close and stuff like that, of course you're buying land with cash. Like it's really hard to get bank financing, and a bank's not going to finance you if you're just flipping it, which is not an investment model. But being able to buy it at a discount, sell it at a competitive price, but have what's typical in the land loan rate at, anywhere from 10 to 13% selling on, terms, makes it so where, yes, the margins are more thin if you look at it from a HUD to HUD, a transaction to transaction. But when you're collecting the interest over years and years, it becomes a much better, in my mind, investment thesis in general.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense there. Now, the last year has been a really interesting year. Has that, or is it just sort of business as usual for you? What does that look like in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, I won't lie. Business was a lot harder 2023, 2024, 2025 compared to the previous years.
Mhm.
Rates hiked up. People weren't just buying land left and right. Certain markets in the US have slowed down a lot, which has driven out a lot of the competition. But I think for me, now that I have, a job essentially, doing this and getting paid, a good amount of money from this company, I'm able to be much more selective with my deals because those were the deals that burned me where I used to think, well, I need to make money, so I'm going to buy it. I like
Mm,
buying, I hate selling, which is not the best philosophy for a land investor. But I think it made it so where I'm able to be much more logical in my decision making and underwriting with each deal, where I'm
interesting.
I'm looking to essentially triple my money on any deal that I'm doing myself within my own company, which is very hard to achieve. But if you can find the right strategy, where at the end of last year, I picked up a pretty decent portfolio. It was just 17 lots from these mineral guys where they severed all the mineral interest in the properties and, sold me the surface rights, which I was able to purchase at, a very, very substantial discount. So being able to find different seller leads that they acquire land at, tax sales and tax auctions at nothing. And then I come
Mhm.
in, they make a healthy return, and then I'm able to make a healthy return on top of it. But in general, it's improvement that adds a lot more value whenever you are doing a subdivision, whether it's minor, major, or an exempt subdivision, or just little stuff like, I mean, you put a well on a property, maybe it costs you
Mm,
20 grand to put a well on it, but it increases the value by, 50 grand. So you're, more than doubling your money whenever you're making stuff that
mm.
the buyer wants. And then once again, being able to offer owner financing, it brings more buyers to the table and makes it so where you start receiving income, even if you have a good amount of capital deployed into the deals.
So, am I hearing this right? Given that you're working also for another company in the same space, it's given you sort of a lot more. I don't know. You're not sort of pressured into making deals left and right, and you're really being a lot more thorough with what you're putting your brain cycles into. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Now I'm not as stressed of selling a property immediately. If I buy something at 20 grand, market's 50 grand, but it might take a year to sell. It's not a big
Yeah.
deal for me because I have additional income coming in from, what amounts to be a W-2 job doing this for someone else. So it has lowered my stress levels a tremendous amount, which is really nice. And it also makes it so, once again, I mean, I'm hammering the point of owner financing because that just unlocks so many more buyers and
Mm,
makes it so where at least you're receiving something, every month whenever you sell something on a note.
yeah. Are a lot of people's like? What are you seeing? A lot of people not seller financing their property. Is that why you're hammering that?
I think it's because land is so non-bankable. Like, yeah, there are rural lenders out there that will, provide land notes and stuff like that. But a lot of times people that are buying the more rural land, they might not have great credit or, the
Mm,
most fantastic income history or something like that. So being able to not have as stringent lending criteria just makes it so where we're able to move inventory a bit more rapidly. I feel like any of the properties that I see that are sitting, especially, for vacant land, it's because good owner financing terms aren't being offered on them.
interesting. Now, going to, quote unquote, the job you have right now, is that sort of a, is that sort of a commission based type of role or, is that a steady salary? How does that look like? How does that get arranged?
Yeah, it's salary and commission. So it's a, salary that essentially pays for my cost of living, and then I make commission on the top line revenue that we make for all the deals.
Amazing.
Which yeah, I never thought I'd get a job again. But whenever I got the offer, saying, yeah, you can keep doing all your own stuff on the side and everything like
Right.
that. We're going to pay you a base salary. We're going to pay you commission. Just do a good job. Yeah, it's kind of a dream. And from people that, you'll never hear them on podcasts, but they've been doing it
Right.
for about 50 years
Right.
and, have done multiple billions in transactions
Yeah.
over the last 50 years. I'm learning a tremendous amount. So it's,
I would assume there's a huge payback in that and the kind of people that you meet in that kind of circle. So what other things have you learned being in that role?
yeah, I think what's funny is a lot of the criteria is kind of the same of, double our money on every deal at least, but just being able to really I think where I've learned the most is on the disposition side, where we run advertising campaigns to be able to sell the land, running
Wow.
meta ads and Google ads and X, on X and YouTube and all sorts of stuff like that of one day sale. It creates a sense of urgency for these people because we do sell out in a day, but
Wow.
just how effective it is actually advertising because the realtor, typical realtor, we're going to list the property. put it on the MLS. It's going to syndicate to all the websites. I send mailers whenever I list a property to just the
Oh,
surrounding property owners to make sure they're aware, put a sign
yeah,
out, put it on Facebook Marketplace, but I'm not spending, 20 to 50,000 running an advertising campaign to sell land
right,
because that's, more than the commission's typically going to be. But
right,
being able to really advertise on the sales side on social media has been really, really cool to see because I attempted that before
yeah,
on the acquisition side and it didn't work very well for land. All I got were house leads whenever I was advertising on Facebook, like
yeah,
a 400 square foot house in like Baton Rouge or something like that. Whenever I'm like, I'm looking for land in Colorado. So I think that's been one of the greatest learning curves is like if you can, advertise and create a sense of urgency with your buyers and then have the back end support to be able to actually do an event. It's kind of like the old days of land auctions. We're all out
right,
there
right.
on walkie talkies. A lot 27 sold. It's a really fun environment. I'd never quite seen it done before. I think a lot of the graybeards that are in land, had participated in stuff like this in
Right.
the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, but seeing it now and seeing how effective it works and how qualified these buyers are. Like most of the buyers are cash buyers that come to these events that they found on Facebook. It's really cool to see.
I mean, any of that sort of translates into your own business? I mean, it's definitely at a larger scale, but I'm curious.
I not quite yet. I've got maybe 2.5 million in inventory, like in my own business right now, that the lots are all spread out from Florida to all over the country and everything like that. So it doesn't
Yeah.
quite make as much sense now. But I think for the next development that I do on my own, wherever that might be, I'm definitely going to institute it of, pay 10, 15 grand on an advertising campaign on Meta and Google. So when people are searching land for sale in whatever state, it pops up and then you see that there's an event, there's a website that leads to it and everything like
Mhm.
that. And you have someone to intake the calls. That's really nice to just be able to get it
Yeah.
in front of as many eyeballs as possible.
And that sounds fun. That sounds fun. Okay. Mason, walk us through maybe one of the more recent bigger deals or any deals of recent here that maybe you can walk us through how did the marketing go and then maybe some of the challenges or lessons learned from that deal.
Yeah, I think that portfolio deal highlights a lot of the challenges in this business where taking on 17 lots, throughout the state, it actually came from one of those realtor mailers where I valued their property and everything. And they said, well, and I let them know, hey, I'm a buyer as well. I can make an offer. It's going to be much lower than market value, but I can take it down at once, as quickly as title can close. We're running into tons of challenges on due diligence because when you're operating in this many different counties, every county has very market specific due diligence. And I think
Right.
that, some of the stuff that we anticipated, just kind of checkbox due diligence ended up being incorrect on the acquisition side of
Oh,
just, stuff being, conforming to code and everything like that. And then finding out
mm,
from the county, oh, actually, it's not buildable. This is what you're going to have to do to get this lot into a buildable space. The returns are still great, but not as great as we wanted them to be. I think that's the biggest challenge once again, because land sells itself whenever you price it correctly. But if you don't have all of your due diligence in order, and that can be as simple as just getting a survey, getting a letter from the county saying it's
oh,
buildable, all the stuff that you're supposed to do. But sometimes when you're overwhelmed with the quantity of properties coming into your pipeline, you skip that. And that is a non issue whenever we're doing a big development project where you've got 90 or 180 days of due diligence to go
right.
through, meet with everybody, regardless of if it's an exempt subdivision, if you know everything, like everything must be in writing from wherever you're doing business to make sure that the land conforms to the use that you expect it to.
Mm,
But yeah, I mean, for that deal, it's the same as anything else. I've bought it for cheap and listing it with realtors throughout the state. Sometimes I list my own land, but not always. If it's out of my home market where I can drive to, like within an hour or two, I still work with realtors. And once again, make sure that the land realtor that you're working with really understands what land actually is. Working with residential realtors to sell land, I've never had success.
Are there any telltale signs of like, land realtors that that, somebody should look out for?
Yes and no. Where no, I'm a part of RLI, which is Realtors Land Institute, and
Mm,
through RLI, there's a designation that you can achieve called an accredited land consultant. If you can
okay.
work with an ALC, work with an ALC. Now, with that being said, like, is the ALC the person that's going to list the $20,000
Mm,
lot, in the middle of wherever? Not necessarily. They work a lot more in rural America with larger land transactions and stuff like that. Look at history, look at the volume, make sure you ask them questions of like, hey, this is all the research I've done on the property. What am I missing? Because you're going to be missing something typically whenever you're doing business in a new county or even
Right.
somewhere that you've done business historically with. The a good land agent's going to be able to tell you everything about your property and tell you all the things that you need to know in order to sell it. From the pictures are great, but and the listing description is fine, but like, who are you actually going to be marketing this property
Mm,
to? Who in your network do you know that is interested in buying stuff like that? So transaction history is the easiest way to look at it. And the easiest way to do that, I mean, shoot, just hop on Zillow, look at
right.
land that's sold recently, see who's selling a lot of land, and call those people and see if they're willing to take on listings for you.
Sure. Curious with that portfolio of the 17 properties, knowing what you had learned and some of the misalignments after due diligence, would you still have done that deal?
I would have. I think I probably would have negotiated an even greater discount just
Mm,
because there were certain challenges with certain properties. Like there's some prime ones in there that were fantastic and some duds, which has historically happened anytime I've bought,
sure.
10 or more lots from one individual. But I think being able to go in and, I have my accountants assign a cost basis that's just like an even split whenever I purchase a portfolio.
Mm,
As versus going in and saying, okay, this one we can't pay anything for. We'll take the deed or whatever, but this one we can pay more for. So I think just going in doing individual valuations on the actual acquisition side is versus just on the sales side,
yeah.
probably would have been better. And then just being a little less lazy with due diligence of just doing all the steps that I do typically on any transaction as versus saying, oh, I'm buying this whole thing at such a discount that it doesn't matter,
Right.
which was true, but it was just lazy at the end of the
Right.
day.
Sure. Sure. Well, you got to weigh out the costs and benefits, I guess, of your time as well. And speaking of time, how do you sort of allocate your time between your own business and where you're working at now? How does that all work? I mean, it seems like you've got 100% autonomy here. I mean, you're really still doing what you do, but for somebody else with consistent income there. So, like, how do you go about that?
Yeah, it's hard because it changes every day.
Right.
I have to I have to travel, for work and stuff like that. All the properties that we're looking at, I'm going and walking the whole property and meeting on site with landowners, meeting on site with different brokers and stuff like that. But it's, I've got a transaction coordinator for the broker side, which kind of eliminates a lot of the paperwork
Oh,
burden of that.
mhm.
In general, I wish I had like, here's how I structure my day.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I figure.
It changes so much every day. I try to take care of my own business stuff more in the morning. Just
Mhm.
anything that needs to get taken care of, do that
Yeah.
before 7 a.m. And then kind of the normal work hours, just making sure everything's moving along. And the thing is, like with these larger development deals,
Yeah.
there's a lot of waiting,
Mm,
for different people to get back with you. I mean,
sure.
so it's not like a sense of urgency of every single day I'm working on something for every single project I have going on. It might be a week or two before I have to deal with anything because it takes 2 or 3 weeks for the surveyor to get out there, for the
Mhm.
road and bridges people to get back to you, for these people to get back to you. So it's just, I've got a project management, dashboard that I use to manage all the development projects. And then in my own business, I don't know if you've heard of this software. It's called Pebble. It keeps me kind of on task and on track with everything to make sure that I'm, keeping up on the acquisitions and dispo side of everything that I have going on. And then just, weekly check-ins with all my brokers that I'm working with, both for, hey, do you have any new properties that I can buy? And all the ones that I have stuff listed with, just making sure you stay on top of them.
Somehow, Mason, you make your chaotic life sound like it's a walk in the park for you.
It's not always, like there's always stuff that's going to come up. And I think that
Yeah.
is one benefit of coming from a hospital administration background is the
Right.
chaos of hospital
Right.
administration where it's life or death as versus real
Right.
estate. I turn my phone off, at night, very family focused. And,
Yeah.
there are no emergencies in real estate. And I think that's, while it's important to answer the phone, people will call, leave a voicemail, send a text message saying, "Hey, I can't get back to you until tomorrow." It's never been an issue in general
Yeah.
for me. So it's chaotic. I want to say organized chaos, but I'm not an organized person as much as I try to be. But no, it's fun. I think beyond kind of changing my philosophy on land investing to make it actual investment has been beneficial, but also treating it like a job. I think a lot of
Right.
people get into this thinking it's like this passive side hustle. I
Right.
mean, this is a full-time plus job. If
Yeah.
you want to be a multi seven figure entrepreneur in this space, it's real. Like
Yeah.
it's real work. And I think unfortunately that's why a lot of people have fallen off within the land investing space, is because they
Yeah.
didn't take it seriously. And it's
Mhm.
a very serious business if you want it to be.
No, I appreciate that, Mason. Speaking of time, too, I mean, you also run a podcast. Help us understand, where can they find you? Where can they check out the podcast? And who do you do that with?
Yeah, I host a podcast with Dan Haberkost, who I know he's been on the show a few times.
Yeah.
I even think his acquisition manager, Daniel, was also on the podcast at one point in time. Who Daniel was
Yeah.
actually a fraternity brother of mine at Baylor University. So it's a fun,
Got you. Right. Right.
close knit world. But I've got the Big Picture Blueprint podcast streaming on all platforms. Reach out to me on Facebook or LinkedIn, Mason McDonald, Instagram, Mason R. McDonald. If just Google Mason McDonald land, and 50 different things will pop up. And I'm happy to connect with people. I'm a real person. I'm not famous. So, I answer the phone. I message people back. I'm here to help, whether it's on the brokerage side, the land investing side, the development side, or how to create a podcast that my mom listens to as well.
You know, I always think one of the best ways to get ahead is just like connecting with others. I don't know if people actually do it. I never hear back from my guests of, oh, so like if you guys are listening and like, I mean, even Dan on the show and whoever on the show, like, I hope you guys are taking advantage of the fact that some of you, these guys like Mason are saying, hey, reach out. I'm a real person. I hope you guys do, because I think, man, I mean, Mason is just so plugged in. Mason, it's been a pleasure catching up with you. I know you've got a lot of exciting things for this year. I'm super excited for you. I'm sure we're going to stay in touch. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Yeah. Again, for those of you guys who are listening, check the show notes to connect with Mason, and check out his show as well.
Thanks, Jesse.